Welcome back. I'm Tedward, and today, thanks to McGovern Hyundai in Wilmington, Massachusetts, we're driving the 2023 Hyundai Santa Cruz. This is the SEL Premium, and boy, oh boy, do trim levels matter in this little ute. Now, I don't think they necessarily call it a ute, because this is essentially just a pickup truckified Hyundai Tucson. But I think it really looks the part. It's a handsome vehicle, and that's something that Hyundai has done very well. But on the back, we do see 2.5T. That means the higher trim levels, the two highest trim levels, get standard all-wheel drive and a turbocharged 2.5-liter four-cylinder. This makes 281 horsepower and 311 pound-feet of torque. The lower trim levels that have optional all-wheel drive and standard front-wheel drive do not have turbos. They are naturally aspirated, meaning you're only getting 191 horsepower. That is a 90 horsepower differential between trim levels, and this one as it sits is just a hair under 40 grand. If you go for the entry levels, you're just at about $26,000. So you've got to make some big decisions whether that's worth it to you. This turbo variant sends its power through all four wheels through a wet clutch DCT. Yes, it's a DCT. The standard option engine does not have that. It's a regular torque converter 8-speed. Let's take a look under the hood before we tour around the practicality of this vehicle. So, under here we've got a very heavy hood. No hood struts here, but pretty standard stuff, pretty easy to see, sat nice and low in the chassis, good for a center of gravity and weight and balance. And Hyundai over the years has really stepped up their appearance game. I think they take some big risks with their styling. This has sort of triangular shapes that move through the vehicle, but it's looking really good. When this started out on the Sonata and Elantra, I think people were a little iffy about it, but now over time we've gotten used to it, and I think they look pretty darn good. This obviously is a lot more sleek than, say, a Ford Maverick, which is essentially a cube. Gluing us to the road on these handsome 18-inch wheels, we have a 245 section tire all around with plenty of sidewall. So this is what I like about the Santa Cruz as sort of a daily utilitarian driver, because the suspension is supple enough, but even if that wasn't enough, you've got all this sidewall to absorb the shocks of ugly potholes. And while it's here, I don't fully understand why there is an image of the Santa Cruz emblazoned onto the plastic shroud. But the real thing here, let's let our private jet go over. But the real selling point of a Santa Cruz is the fact that you have a truck bed, and you've got this beautiful built-in tonneau cover that does a pretty good job, and you have this rubber gasket to mate up against the tailgate, so hopefully we're not dealing with any water intrusion. And you even get a side step on the bumper, just like you might get on a Chevy Colorado. That's pretty good stuff. Back here, when we open our tailgate, we're greeted with a reasonably spacious small truck bed, but when we get under some of this newfangled stuff, you see open with an arrow. Now, there's a little button here, just a rubber electric button, and then up on the hood struts, we have a locked away cubby. Again, waterproof, water sealed, so you can put some things back here without worrying about someone breaking through that tonneau cover and getting into your stuff. Now, I do always wonder about like the longevity of some of these types of things, because this is just plastic, so I'd be curious to see how these hold up over the years. But I'll tell you what, I had a Rivian in California recently, and the electric tonneau cover didn't even work. In the back, we've got seating for 3, pretty convenient, and with that front seat in my driving position, I have plenty of room back here. It's not in a particularly spacious rear compartment, but it does the job if you needed to move people around. And let's see, I guess we don't have any ability for rear armrests, but hey, this is utilitarian. There is, however, the ability to open that little window, just like you're used to in a typical pickup truck. Now up front, this is where the SEL Premium starts to matter, because you get the leather-wrapped shift knob, you get the leather-wrapped steering wheel, you have power adjustable seats, all these things. This is where I think a little bit of creature comforts goes a long way, in addition to the fact that you're getting a far more powerful engine. When we jump up front, you'll notice that these door handles are actually nice and low. That's a pretty ergonomic thing. I think that's kind of interesting that it's even noticeable, but you're like, wow, that is actually in a nice location. And this is what Hyundai does best. Hyundai is a tricky brand because Hyundai is not always the name recognition that you want it to be. It sounds a little cheap. It feels like a sub-premium brand, but my goodness, they have come a long way over the past few years. And this is how they get their customers, because everything feels good. Everything does feel premium and nice. So when you get in this car, you sit in the seat, you adjust everything, you feel like you're in something a lot more expensive right off the bat. So let's get it started. We have just a fully digital display here with this screen and this screen. We'll start it over here, engine start stop. And we're greeted with our typical Hyundai interface. We recognize these gauges. They're familiar to us if you've been in any Hyundai products as of late. And I do dig that this is not a three-pronged steering wheel or three-spoke steering wheel, because, you know, when I'm driving a car like this, I do tend to enjoy driving with my hand down here. So, HVAC controls. We do not have any actual knobs or buttons. That's a little bit annoying to me because I like especially a volume knob. You do have volume controls on the steering wheel, but volume buttons versus volume knobs are never preferred. You do, however, get 3 levels of heated seats, and these look fairly durable. Not leather, but this looks like a bit of waterproofing, and you know, you can get down and dirty with these. We also have wireless phone charging up front. That's lovely, helpful for me because I did not bring my wire. So let's go out and take it for a drive, just see how this thing is. It's not a sports car, but it is a reasonable daily. Man, the first thing I'm noticing is just actually how tall I am in the vehicle. This is an SUV. I think when I first saw the Santa Cruz, I just thought, well, it's a ute. It's an Australian ute. How cool is that we're getting that? But really, it is just like a small SUV with a pickup truck bed, not a car. It is not an El Camino, and I'm not dissing the El Camino. I'd actually be pretty happy with an El Camino right now in the market. This 8-speed DCT is exceptionally smooth. You almost don't notice that it's a DCT. Back in the BMW days where everything went DCT, it was good for performance. It was not incredible for driving in traffic. And this is doing a pretty good job of giving me fast shifts. Now this engine, although this is the more powerful engine, bit of turbo lag, but nothing excessive. And again, we're not in a sport or sporty car. It doesn't need to deliver to the market in that way. So I'm totally fine with this having, you know, a little bit of lag. Let's see how it gets out of the hole up here. Plenty of poke. It'll tow 5,000 pounds, and it always makes me a little nervous towing with a dual clutch transmission. Not my ideal scenario, but you could, and you probably wouldn't do it often because I can't imagine you're towing like a car or a camper with this. But I suppose if you had a small camper, you could get away with it. As far as drivability is concerned, the steering, it's not vague, it's properly weighted. I think the suspension absorbs imperfections in the road nicely. It's certainly not a Rolls Royce by any standards, but it's not overly stiff, which is always a risk when it comes to anything that's sort of designed to carry some cargo. Now, based off the Tucson, you wouldn't anticipate that they're giving this some pickup truck suspension, but they very well could have. and in crummy New England roads, especially during the winter where the plows have just torn up every bit of pavement and turned them into pothole nightmares. Knowing that I've got 60 aspect ratio tires with monster sidewalls is really comforting. I don't have to think twice about what's going on. Plenty of poke. I definitely can't imagine this with 100 horsepower less. I think I would definitely option this with the higher spec engine if I were to be buying. Let's jump on the highway. I'm very curious how this operates at speed, because comfort is certainly necessary if you're going to be buying something like this. You could have just bought a Tacoma for the money, but you didn't. You bought something that's going to behave a little more like a regular car. So let's see, we're at 68 miles an hour. Let's see what passing is like. Plenty of punch. Plenty of punch. And this is where Hyundai starts to punch above its weight class, because the competitors aren't necessarily doing this. Honda has not really prioritized power and torque the way Hyundai has. And that's the thing, I can make a very safe move getting back over here because I've got this kind of power. Dipping into these brakes, feeling good. I got to push for them a little bit. They get a little squishy down at the bottom, but I'm never concerned that they are available. I'm certainly thankful that cars like this exist. I can understand why there's not a whole lot in this class that fit this mold. But, you know, Hyundai has to work harder than everybody else because they're always trying to overcome that name. Toyota, Honda, those brands have loyalty, longevity. They have their customer base built in, and not only on the new market, but on the secondhand market. It's tough to justify buying a used Hyundai. They're not holding value that well in certain regards. So, you know, for some people, a used Hyundai is a really valuable thing to have on the market because you can get them a heck of a lot cheaper than a Civic or an HRV or a CRV. But if they keep coming out with cars like this, where they're taking a little bit of a chance, there's something that just doesn't exist in that niche, then maybe this is how they start to corner that market and build that brand equity going forward. So thanks again to McGovern Hyundai in Wilmington, Massachusetts for the opportunity to drive a Santa Cruz. You know, this isn't a car that I would have necessarily gone and jumped at, but when they tossed me the keys, I said, you know what? I do want to drive that. It's a handsome car, and I've always wondered what it would be like to drive what essentially is the only ute in the market right now. I know you could kind of say the Maverick is too, but I still look at that and just aesthetically, it's more pickup truck than ute, whereas this feels more ute than pickup truck. Thank you guys so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Don't forget to respect the drive, and I'll see you in the next one.